Growing up in Midwest America, I was raised like most people. I went to church every Sunday and I sat there and listened to the preacher talk about salvation and how through the love of God and Jesus, all of my problems would go away and I would have eternal life when I died. But something that always bothered me is through all the songs, the preaching, they never really seemed to talk about life now. They never really seemed to talk about what do you do when life is hard. And oftentimes if you asked, hey, my life is hard, what do I do? They would simply tell you to pray more. This is one of the reasons I left the church when I turned 18 and got out on my own. It's just this answer to life that seemed meaningless. It's just pray more and wait for salvation or be baptized and receive salvation. And I think this is something that infects us and creates a pattern in our mind on what religion should be. This idea of salvation is still just below the surface. And this is something that I have witnessed over the years. This is something that I've had to experience and go through myself. And it's the idea that when you become a pagan or you start following these spiritual beliefs and paths, is the gods are not going to save you. Spirituality isn't going to save you, at least not in the way that Christianity teaches us it will. And so in this video, we're going to be talking about how the gods won't save you, which is a very dramatic way to grab your attention. I hope it did. But ultimately, I want this conversation to be an uplifting one, because I do see too many people get into paganism and then fall out of practice or fall out of trust because they have this misconception that they are going to be saved when they become a pagan. Let me expand a little bit on why I'm bringing this up. Because I've been doing public paganism for about 4 or 5 years now, where I've been really, on social media talking to people and listening to people and giving people advice and making these videos. And I've seen a lot of people come and go, a lot of people. It's actually kind of scary how many people I've seen. They come in so passionately, they love paganism so much, they scream the gods' names, they wear the Mjolnir with pride, they wear the oath ring, they get the tattoos, and then within a year they've burned themselves out. And more often than not, the reason they burn themselves out is because they hit a rough patch in life. Because we always hit a rough patch in life. That's just life. And so when they hit this rough patch, they lean to the gods and they say, gods, fix my problems for me. And that's just simply not how it works. And they expect, because now that they're a pagan, because they follow Odin or Thor or Freya, that the gods are going to fix all their problems for them. And then magically, when the problems are not fixed, they blame the gods. And they say, oh, this religion is not real. It doesn't care about me. And so they leave. Either becoming atheists or going back to the church because it's something convenient. I've seen it all. I've seen all aspects of this. And so I think the first piece of advice I have for you is that paganism is not about fixing your problems. It's about giving you an acceptance of life, because life kind of sucks sometimes. Life is great sometimes as well. It's all a matter of things. And I believe that when we change our perception from this being saved to acceptance of life for what it is, for the good and the bad, and realizing that life has so many good and wonderful things, and then in the afterlife, I hardly ever think about the afterlife. That's afterlife. I'm focused on life now. And so changing our perception, breaking apart these old church patterns of focus on the afterlife and focus on salvation. These are two very hard things to get rid of for people coming over to these more nature-based paths, these more polytheistic, animistic paths. So it can be quite difficult. It takes a long time, but it's kind of like a mantra. You really have to kind of tell yourself this all the time, that when life does suck, you start this pagan path, you start worshiping the Norse gods. Everything's great at first, you have that euphoric rush, and then all of a sudden life gets hard and you lose that connection. And I don't think it's necessarily that connection going away. It's us getting busy. It's life getting hard that removes that connection from us. Or it's just not new anymore. And I think that's another thing that affects people as well, is this newness wears off to following a pagan path. And so I think a lot of people lose touch with it because of that as well. More often than not, I get messages from people asking about something horrible happened in their life. And they say, what do I do to make this go away spiritually? What can I do to call upon the gods and get them to solve my problems for me? And this relationship just doesn't really exist of, sitting down with a a bourbon or an ale or something like that and calling to Odin, fix my problems for me, Odin. Usually doesn't happen like that, and then your problems magically go away. I typically give offerings. I perform rituals for gratitude. And I feel the more that I perform these rituals of gratitude, the more in my life I will have moments to be grateful for, because I'm not asking from something from the divine powers. I am thanking them for what they already do. You might be thinking, well, if this is something that already comes to you, then it's not the gods giving it to you. It's not life giving it to you. But what I would counter with is that once you walk this path for a while, and I'm finally getting to this point, is when something bad happens to you, you're grateful for it as well. Because it's a part of life. It's a part of the human experience, is having something bad happen to you. And oftentimes there's a lesson in there. Sometimes things happen to us for no apparent reason and no lesson. It does happen. But for the past few years, the more I've reflected on the pagan path and the spiritual path, the more I see that these bad things more often than not, I would say 95% of the time, have a lesson baked into them. And it's about overcoming that. And then by overcoming this hardship, you become stronger. And when you become stronger, your connection to the gods gets stronger. Your connection to life gets stronger. And you just become more grateful. And so I know it can be hard when you first get started on this pagan path to have these moments of gratitude for the hardships. But to me, this is one of the best points to reach when you start walking this kind of spiritual belief, is being grateful for these hardships. When looking at the source material, I think this is also where paganism is very interesting, is because it doesn't promise a life without hardships. There's nothing about that anywhere in the written source materials. In fact, I would say it's quite the opposite. Is most of the time in the written source materials, you could say that most of the things recorded were hardships. Very rarely were the good times recorded as well. So to kind of go back to something I was arguing with myself here for you, on your sake, for the people that will ask it, is if the gods aren't doing something for you, if they aren't saving you from problems, what's the point of following them? Well, it goes to these stories. Is when we read that, Odin, the highest of gods, or Thor, the strongest of gods, go through hardship. By reading these stories of the gods struggling, we accept that in our lives there's going to be struggles as well. And there's also fated moments. Eventually our mother and father will die. Eventually our grandparents will die. Eventually we will die. Perhaps our children will die, and we'll have to deal with this grief. Paganism doesn't reject grief. Paganism doesn't reject hardship. It only helps you deal with it more. It's not going to prevent someone you love from dying. It's not going to prevent you from dying. But it's going to help you come to terms with those things, I think. And I think that's better than not having religion at all, or having belief system at all, is not knowing what to expect when something bad happens. Really letting that consume you. And as someone who's struggled with anxiety and depression my whole life, this consumption by the darkness is obviously something that many people fight daily sometimes, hourly sometimes. And I really do genuinely believe that the pagan path and following these rituals and ceremonies and acceptance of the natural cycles of life, I believe it helps you deal with this darkness more. And so I do believe that paganism definitely has a place in your life, and I think it's very important. And then, of course, I could talk about spiritual healing as well. It's something I've been researching and studying and practicing for a while now. There's definitely things in life that medicine can't help. There's definitely things in life that psychiatry can't help, or therapists can't help. I'm not saying these things. I don't reject these things. Well, maybe the medical industry in the U.S. a little bit, but if I break a leg, I'm still going to go to the doctor. But when it comes to things such as trauma, or the things such as anxiety or hardship, this baggage we pick up in life, we all pick up the baggage, is I believe that spiritual healing and spiritual processes and rituals and ceremonies help us come to terms and deal and heal with this baggage that we pick up throughout our lives. And I do think this is all kind of wrapped into paganism as well, is these rituals and ceremonies that help us accept life and help us deal with the pain and the hardship and heal from it. We'll always have scars. We'll all die with scars. But at least they've healed. Their memory will always be there with us and always be a part of our story. But I'd rather heal from these pains in life than to go my whole life just thinking it's going to get better in the end, or thinking that some mystical force is just going to magically make all my problems go away. I'd rather confront them myself with spiritual backing, with spiritual help, and heal from these things. So I think I've been rambling for a bit, and this is going to be very interesting to edit. But I do believe that the biggest difference between the pagan path and the Christian path is the difference between salvation and acceptance of life. I'm not looking to be saved from this life. I love this life. This is a beautiful day. I have amazing friends. I love people, and I love learning people's stories, and I love celebrating the seasonal changes and all these things. I accept life for what it is. I do not need to be saved from it. And so that is ultimately why I believe that the gods will not save you, because you do not want to be saved from this life. You only want to accept it for what it is and live it. And that is how we honor ourselves. This is how we honor the gods. This is how we honor the beautiful world we're in. One of the few things written about this in the Have 'Em All is it's better to be living than dead, because only a living person enjoys these things in life. And so that's something that rings true to me. Whereas Christianity seems like it really tries to emphasize being dead. That this world sucks. You don't want this. A good example, closing out here. So this place I'm at right now, it's a old commune for a religious sect called the Shakers in the United States. And they believed that one of the ways to connect to a more godly existence was to give up sex and to never have sex. And so they had men's and women's dorms, and you were kicked out of the community if you had sex. But obviously, this does not lead to a prosperous community, because they didn't have any children, and they eventually died off because they raised orphans. But those orphans quickly decided that they didn't want to take on these vows of celibacy. And so while they created a very beautiful place here of peace, they ultimately didn't enjoy life, and they didn't continue life because, well, they didn't enjoy it very much. But please join in the conversation down below in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this statement of the gods will not save us. I'm sure there'll be a few people in there that say, no, the gods did save me. They saved me from this, that, the other thing. That's great. It's wonderful. But I would still almost argue that they don't necessarily have a divine power coming down and snapping their fingers. More often than not, it helped us accept these hardships in life. But if you have the story of having divine power save you from hardship, please let me know. I would love to hear that story. But this is just my experience, my interpretation of acceptance. Very, very happy with the path I'm on, because it helped me enjoy. It's helped me enjoy life even more. It's not had to save me from it. So, anyways, I will end this rambling. Again, please like, comment, share, all that good stuff, and let me know your thoughts down below. But until then, until the next video here at the Wisdom of Odin, thank you very much for joining me for this rambling video talking about the subject of the gods will not save us. See you in the next one.